we do? Stand up, fight back. What do 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 we do when black workers are under attack? Stand up, fight back. What do we do when indigenous workers are under attack? Stand up, fight back. What do we do when Asian workers are under attack? Stand up, fight back. What do we do when Arab workers are under attack? Stand up, fight back. What do we do when South Asian workers are under attack? Stand up, fight back. What do we do when racialized workers are under attack? Stand up, fight back. What do we do? 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 Stand up, fight back. And for how long will we fight back? What's that? I didn't hear that. For how long? For how long? For how long? One day longer. One day stronger. 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 All right, everybody make some noise.
How are we feeling? For over 50 years, the government of Canada has discriminated against black people, has denied them promotional opportunities, has denied them hiring, relegated them to the lowest entry in the public service. But this government has come to us now, within the last 4 years, announcing several measures and wants us to accept that as a remedy to settle decades of discrimination. What do we want? And when do we want it? I want to hear that again. What do we want? Are we going to accept announcements? Are we going to accept announcements? What should this government do with this class action? Tell them. What should this government do with this class action? Other class actions, what have they done? With this class action, we are demanding historic justice. And it is not just about compensation. It is about protecting this work, ensuring that it is protected for generations to come. That is what a settlement of this class action will do. It will protect the work, especially from future government changes. So the Employment Equity Act, we want the government to bring those changes. The mental health program, we want the government to bring those changes. And we want it all settled in this class action so that it is protected for life. You've heard Canada's arguments in the court this morning. You've seen what your government is doing to you after they have harmed you and after they have acknowledged that they harmed you. And this is their response, to go get redress in the same systems that have harmed you. So I'm going to invite our next speaker, who's going to talk briefly on the legal points. Kofi Achapong. All right, we'll bring up Bernadette Becci in the meantime. I want to introduce a brave public service worker who has stood valiantly, who has answered the call to stand up for workers, many workers who are unable to stand up for themselves. Bernadette Becci, please share a few words with us.
Lorsque je dis Ubuntu, vous répondez Ubuntu. 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 Je suis car nous sommes. I am because we are. I'm standing today. Je me tiens aujourd'hui devant vous en tant que maman, en tant que fille, en tant qu'épouse, en tant qu'amie, en tant que militante, mais aussi en tant que militante pour les droits de la personne pour chacune et chacun d'entre nous. Je travaillais il y a quelques années à la Commission canadienne des droits de la personne, où est-ce que j'ai vécu, entre autres, et d'autres personnes noires et racisées ont vécu cette discrimination que nous luttons contre aujourd'hui, contre notre gouvernement fédéral. Alors, je me tiens aujourd'hui pour vous dire que nous allons continuer tant et aussi longtemps que nous n'allons pas avoir la justice que nous devons recevoir pour nos ancêtres, pour les personnes qui se battent aujourd'hui et aussi pour nos enfants. Ubuntu. I'm standing here in front of all of you as a mother, as a friend, as a worker, first as a daughter, but also as a human rights activist. I believe that I am because we are. So I'm fighting for your rights, for my rights, for the rights of our ancestors, for the rights of people that are here right now, but also for the rights of our children. We're doing this for our children. We're doing this to give them the best life that they can, to have them, to give them the best legacy that they can have. I used to work at the Canadian Human Rights Commission, and I have experience amongst other Black workers, amongst other racialized workers. I have experienced the racism, the violence that we are here fighting today. I will not stop. We will not stop until we have justice. I am because we are Ubuntu. Kofi?
Kofi, if you could bring some quick remarks. And we have a guest speaker here joining us who will address us shortly. The leader of Canada's New Democratic Party, Singh, is joining us today.
All right, everybody, how y'all doing? This is a historic day. This is a historic lawsuit. We're here taking on 99 departments and agencies in the federal government. This is likely the largest institutional class action in Canadian history. So we're making history with this action right now. All of you guys should feel proud of yourselves. Those of you who come here, so you are using your voice, spreading the word. Let Canada know that it's unacceptable to be fighting Black people who are seeking justice for 50 years of discrimination in hiring and employment. We've all heard the stories. We've all heard what happens when people face this kind of discrimination throughout their careers. They end up retiring broken. They end up retiring, dissatisfied with mental health issues. And this is the legacy of discrimination and racism and Black employment exclusion. So we have a role to play here in changing Canada, in making Canada accountable to international conventions it's signed up for. We have a role to change Canada in ensuring that the Human Rights Commission, an organization that's currently under investigation by a UN-affiliated body, actually represents what it's supposed to represent. We have a role in ensuring that anti-Black racism is not something that Canada is going to take lightly, that this will be a place where regardless of your background, regardless of your ethnicity, your race, religion, what have you, you have the right to ensure that you have opportunity based on merit, based on opportunity, based on everything that you bring as an employee to the table. So I want to say, give yourselves a round of applause. But we have something to do today. Right now, today, the government is fighting two motions. The government is trying to tell us that we can't introduce evidence at the Privy Council office, which demonstrates that the Privy Council office, which is the head of the federal public service, is infected with anti-black racism. We have a report that the government, Jay, we have a report that the government itself commissioned, which gives evidence to the fact that black employees themselves were discriminated against. That when they raised issues and they tried to alert senior executives to challenges that they were having, they faced reprisals. They were called the N-word. This is at the height of the federal public service. And today now we have the government in court telling us that they don't think it's right for the court to hear this evidence, that it's not relevant to the consideration of certification of the class action. Isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that absurd? The other motion we're hearing today is that the government is trying to fight us on the introduction of the Senate's own report. The Senate launched an investigation of the Human Rights Commission following complaints that were brought by black employees about discrimination that they were facing. That Human Rights Commission itself was refusing to hear cases. The body that you are supposed to go to seek redress was refusing to hear cases about anti-black racism, which ultimately led to a complaint being filed. Treasury Board finding that in fact systemic anti-black racism was rampant in the Human Rights Commission, which ultimately then led to a Senate report. That report is what we're trying to introduce into the record to demonstrate commonality, systemic commonality across federal institutions. If you cannot go to the Human Rights Commission to address anti-black racism in this country, where can you go? If you can't go to the Human Rights Commission to address anti-black racism, where can you go? And we are trying to simply get that report put into the record to demonstrate that a class action is the right vehicle, the right mechanism to ensure that we receive justice. And the government is fighting us on that today. So we have a job to do today to demonstrate, to let government know that it's unacceptable to be fighting us in courts. And I should mention this. It's very common in class actions for these kind of reports to be introduced. It's very common in class actions for an expert report to be introduced to demonstrate narratives. And yet, for some reason, the government has decided that it wants to oppose the introduction of these reports. They're only doing it in relation to a case related to black people and a class action. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kofi, for that update, for your work with landmark class action. I'm going to introduce to you now, and just before I do that, I want to say this. This is a fight for justice, for decades of justice that has gone on for a very long time. And not many politicians have stood with workers. Not many politicians have consistently showed up for workers, utilizing all the mechanisms that are available in the parliament. And today, joining us is that leader, the leader of Canada's New Democratic Party, Jaspreet Singh.
Hey, thank you very much. Listen, I'm gonna look straight at the cameras. So let's look at the cameras together. I'm gonna send them a message. You know how we do this, okay? So look right at the cameras. So this is what's going on today. We got a simple message. This is to decades, as Kofi mentioned, as my brother mentioned. This is decades of fighting, over 50 years of discrimination. That black employees were discriminated in the federal government. As workers were discriminated. So we have a simple message. This is to the federal government. Stop fighting black workers in court and settle this disagreement right now. Settle. simple message. Stop fighting black workers in court and settle this case. Settle this case. The discrimination is clear, and we don't want discrimination at any level, but particularly at the highest level of this country, we don't want discrimination. That sets the president. So the message is clear, directly to the government. The conservative government has done this, the liberal government has done this, both of them have done it, now the liberals are in power. This message is Justice Trudeau directly to you. Stop fighting these workers in court. Stop. Settle this case. Settle it. These are hardworking people. They work hard. They were discriminated not because of their work, not because of their temper, not because of the capabilities, simply because of the color of their skin. So stop the discrimination, settle the case, give justice to these workers, and frankly, settling this case is not going to give justice. It is justice, the harm was already done. The harm was done, people were hurt, people were discriminated, people were made to feel less than. That's never going to change. This is just about giving a little bit of recognition for the harm that was done and committing to never do it again. So let's commit to getting this right and never letting this happen again. Thank you very much.
If we can get everyone to come in just a little closer, we're now going to give director Anthony.
Where's Rianne? Oh. They're gonna take questions if you. They're gonna take questions if you. You want to make any remarks before they take questions? Or you want to take questions? Want to reiterate?
Members of the media, my name is Nicholas Marcus Thompson. I'm a representative plaintiff in Thompson Class Action, known as the Black Class Action lawsuit, which seeks to redress decades of discrimination in Canada's federal public service. We're here to provide an update to the media on the class action. The certification hearing has begun here in Toronto, and the court will have to decide whether this class action moves forward or not. Joining me today are other representative plaintiffs, workers from the public service, the Canadian public, council, legal advisor for the Black Class Action Secretariat, Chaplain is here. My right is Bernadette Convention, also representative plaintiff. Discrimination has plagued Canada's public service, and Black workers are disproportionately impacted. Canada has, over the past few years, announced some measures to address this discrimination. It has acknowledged discrimination and the harm that it has caused to workers. But so far, Black workers have only had announcements and platitudes and promises. None of the measures have been fully realized, and Canada is suggesting to workers that they should accept these promises as remedy and restitution for decades of discrimination in its public services. We categorically reject Canada's position that Black workers should accept some announcements to redress decades of harm. We didn't have to be here today. Canada could have consented to certifying or agreeing for this class action to move to the next step, which is not an admission of, of guilt. Canada has refused to do that. Instead, it wants to litigate this class action all the way. It has spent over $10 million fighting black workers in court, more than it has spent in terms of providing solutions to this. Arif Virani continues to fight black workers in court alongside Anita Anand and Justin Trudeau, workers that they have collectively, that these office holders have collectively acknowledged that the public service has harmed workers. And we are collectively here today to express our disappointment in the government of Canada's position, continuing to fight black workers. I'm going to introduce to you a worker who's going to tell you what her experiences in very briefly, what her experience in Canada's public service is like. We've heard about the Canadian Human Rights Commission, the very body that Canada created to address discrimination and to provide protection for workers. And this very body has been discriminating against black workers, and not just its own employees, but when Canadians file complaints to this body, the records show that it has disproportionately rejected those race-based complaints. The record shows that all white investigative teams usually investigate anti-black racism and other forms of discrimination. It shows a workplace that is so toxic that workers warn others about working there. So Bernadette is going to speak to that.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je m'appelle Bernadette Becci, B-E-R-N-A-D-E-T-H, Becci, B-E-G-C-H-I, et je suis une ancienne employée de la Commission canadienne des droits de la personne. Alors, comme plusieurs gens qui travaillent à la Commission, lorsque j'ai commencé à la Commission canadienne de la personne, j'avais le désir de vouloir aider les Canadiens et les Canadiennes, de pouvoir défendre leurs droits en tant qu'humains, de pouvoir emmener de l'aide justement à ce Canada pour un Canada meilleur pour toutes et pour tous. Lorsque j'ai commencé, je me suis rendu compte qu'il y avait beaucoup de pratiques à l'intérieur de la Commission qui étaient violentes et dangereuses, non seulement pour les employés eux-mêmes, mais aussi pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes qui ont tant d'espoir envers cette commission, qui déposent des plaintes parce qu'ils sont en train de vivre des souffrances dans leur vie de travail et souvent se font refuser pour des causes raciales, à cause de la couleur de leur peau. Alors, en 2020, j'ai décidé avec d'autres employés de déposer une plainte contre mon employeur et depuis, nous sommes en train de se battre pour faire changer toutes ces demandes, en fait, de demander des changements systémiques au niveau du système, au niveau des institutions et au niveau de tous les départements fédéraux au Canada pour pouvoir permettre aux gens comme moi, aux travailleurs comme moi, aux personnes comme moi, maman, papa, aux personnes comme moi de pouvoir vieillir dans une dignité parce que nous aussi faisons partie de ce Canada qui fait si bon de vivre. J'aimerais aussi vous dire, vous à la maison, chacune d'entre vous, mais aussi aux gens qui sont venus ici aujourd'hui, à nos alliés, mais aux gens qui vivent ces violences au quotidien. Je vous vois, je vous entends et je vous crois. Ce qui est différent de le message qu'on nous envoie aujourd'hui en cours, qui est très décevant. Cette résistance à croire aux employés qui disent « assez, c'est assez ». Lorsque je gagne, vous gagnez. Merci.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to repeat this in English. My name is Bernadette Becci, and I am a former worker. I used to work at the Canadian Human Rights Commission. When I first started at the commission, I had high hopes. I thought that I had found my forever home in terms of my employer. I am a human rights activist at heart. I care for humans, and I thought that I would be able to fight for the rights of humans within that institution. When I started, I found out that there was a lot of violent practices inside of the commission towards their employees, but also that the same practices were discriminatory towards people that would file complaints at the commission, and usually their complaints would be turned down because of the color of their skin. So in 2020, myself and other employees filed a complaint against our employer. From that was born the Senate hearing, the Senate report um, on discrimination, anti-black discrimination, sexism, um, and yeah, anti-black racism, sexism, and discrimination at the Human Rights Commission, but also for all the other other departments across the public service. What I wanted to say also is to you at home and to everyone that came today, the one that experience violence on a daily basis, the ones that are allies and are here to fight also with us and for us. I see you, I believe you, I know that you're saying the truth, and I know that you're suffering right now, and we're not going to stop fighting until we have justice. Today, I was a bit disappointed by what I heard in court because I would keep receiving resistance in believing our stories. These folks are not lying. They're telling their truth. They're telling their experiences, and we need to continue fighting for them. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. So today we're here in court today on two matters. We want the counsel for the class action want to introduce into the record evidence which we believe will support and assist the court in determining that the class action is the most appropriate and the most effective means of seeking redress and mediation for Black public service workers. Government from Council for Canada is arguing that they acknowledge that yes, there's discrimination in the public service. Anti-black racism is wrong. They acknowledge this in court documents. What they want to tell us, though, however, is that the court doesn't have jurisdiction. The court shouldn't have jurisdiction, and that people should go out and seek individual claims. They should use various policy grievance processes. Unfortunately, what this does is that it discounts the decades of discrimination. It leaves no means for actual redress for people who spent years in a public service. We have plaintiffs who spent 30 years in public service and never received promotion, despite going out and getting training, despite going out and demonstrating through performance reviews that they're among the top in their field. They would never find themselves being hired at the executive level. And Canada has, through its own reports, demonstrated time and time again that Black people were consistently pigeonholed at the lowest ends, lowest rungs of the public service, and their own reports demonstrate this to be the case. So much so that they asked a task force to come together to review the Employment Equity Act itself, and that task force later on went forward to make a determination that a separate category needed to be created for Black people and US LGBTQ people. An acknowledgement and admission that something is wrong, something is not working in terms of legislation and policy in this country. And yet here Canada finds itself defending against an action that's trying to seek justice for those people who were never hired. Okay, many Black people qualified, went to school, did everything they needed to do or thought was necessary for them to do in order for them to get opportunities to work in the public service, and find themselves discriminated against, not being given opportunity. For those who would find themselves hired, they were told very clearly, they would learn very soon that there were limits to what they could achieve in the public service. And so what we see at the top of the public service is that there is a lack of racial diversity. There's a lack of fairness and equity at the public service itself. And then, of course, we see that the institutions that are supposed to be the mechanism, the means by which we're supposed to seek redress for injustice and discrimination themselves are replete with these same patterns, these same policies, these same tactics that deny and close doors of opportunity towards Black people. And to us, this is what we're fighting here today. The government seeks to limit our ability today to introduce certain evidence, in particular a report at the Privy Council office that establishes that at the highest level of the government itself, there's a culture, a rotten culture of anti-Black racism. There's a culture in which Black people are not allowed to advocate for justice, to to address issues of racial inequality, and that they're repressed every time they attempt to do this. Many of them have to deal with the remarks that are very violent in nature. They have to deal with all kinds of machinations against efforts to address discrimination. And of course, when they seek redress through the Human Rights Commission, they come to find out, as Bernadette has already shared with you, that institution itself is infected with systemic anti-Black racism. That institution's leaders, many of them have had to resign. Many employees have had to suffer the reality of what it means to try and seek justice in a place that's set up supposedly to give you justice, but in reality does just the opposite. So we're here today to introduce in the record reports that the government's own reports that demonstrates a culture of anti-Black racism at the top of the public service, a culture of anti-Black racism at the Human Rights Commission, the body that the government then says we should be seeking justice at, and to ensure that the court has in its scope full information and evidence that it needs to support the certification of this class action. That's what we're calling for today.
We've got a clear message. As the leader of the New Democratic Party, we always stand with working people. We're founded by workers, founded by unions. We respect these workers. These are federal employees that keep our country going. They do fundamentally important work for our country, and they deserve at a minimum that they should go to a workplace and know that they're not going to be discriminated against. Yeah. And so our message is very clear. As a party dedicated to standing with workers every step of the way, our message is the liberals and the conservatives have discriminated these workers for too long. Stop fighting them in court and settle this case. That is our message. Government has the power to do that. Recognize there's a class action lawsuit. They can recognize that these are real, legitimate grievances. They can accept the evidence against them, and then they can sit down and negotiate a settlement. Work on actually solving the problem. And I said this before, and I want to say it again. This settlement is not going to change the fact that people have been harmed, that people's entire careers they were discriminated against. That people worked hard, wanted to give back to their country, and work at the federal level, work as federal employees, and that they were not recognized for their work. They were discriminated against. But what this does acknowledge, it acknowledges that harm was suffered, and then it also says we will commit to never letting it happen again. Let us take that step of justice today. Let us take a step forward, acknowledge the harm suffered, commit to never letting it happen again, remedy what we can, and move forward. So that's my call today. Let's have the federal government recognize this, stop fighting them in court, and settle this. Thank you.
Yes. We're going to take any questions.
Oui, merci. Je suis chef d'une partie et je suis tellement fier du fait qu'on était fondé par les travailleurs, on était fondé par les syndicats. Et comme un parti fondé par les travailleurs, on est toujours en solidarité avec ces travailleurs. Ces travailleurs aujourd'hui, ce sont des travailleurs au niveau fédéral qui travaillent pour notre pays, qui gèrent les dossiers importants pour notre pays. Et ils ont fait face à des discriminations. Donc notre message est clair. Au lieu de se battre contre ces employés dans la Cour de justice, arrêtez ça et négocier une entente. Négocier et reconnaître le fait que le gouvernement fédéral a discriminé ces gens, ces travailleurs. C'est injuste et on ne peut pas changer l'histoire. Le fait que plusieurs personnes ont travaillé toute leur carrière, ils n'ont pas reçu la reconnaissance dont ils auraient eu besoin. Mais ce qu'on peut dire aujourd'hui, si le gouvernement accepte qu'il y avait des discriminations, on peut accepter que c'était une erreur et on peut les engager de ne le pas faire dans le futur. Donc, notre message pour Justin Trudeau et du bureau, arrêtez de discriminer ces travailleurs, arrêtez de les poursuivre dans le cours de justice et livrer une solution. Merci.
My question is for Brendan, actually. I just wanted to get a sense of your response when you do hear perspective or potential threat at a forward like the rights commission. What goes through your mind?
So,
repeat your question.
can you repeat the question?
You
Okay, so are you asking me what are my impressions of how I feel about
the idea that this is a potential remedy that's being prescribed to people. Go to the Human Rights Commission, share your issue with them. What do you think about that?
So what I know is that right now, as we stand, a lot of Canadians have lost faith in institutions, right? The institution that is supposed to fight for their Canadians and workers, right? Has lost a lot of faith. So there's many. I need to keep having faith in this Canada. Otherwise, if we lose faith, then it's as if I'm saying that I don't believe in a better future. However, I think that as it stands, we need to dismantle the way the Human Rights Commission is done, the way it operates. We need to change everything from the ground up, and I think then folks will start having faith in the institution again. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but that's how.
So we do know that it is certified at this degree, class action. In some settlements, sorry, let's say, what's the other side of it? No,
What happens if the court says
no, it denies it. It's not certified.
Yeah, so I mean, if the court refuses to certify this case, I mean, first of all, that would be a tragic result, and in many ways, a denial of justice. I think, we have to, work with class plaintiffs to determine what they would like to do. And we understand that sometimes, there are various stages and processes you have to undergo in seeking justice. We have to reflect on the rationale ultimately are for denying certification. But we think we have a very strong case. There's ample information and evidence being put forward about why certification. Ultimately, the court is the only vehicle mechanism by which these public servants can seek democratic justice right now. The court has to recognize that it has that remedial jurisdiction, and that we properly brought forward a certification application that meets the test for that. So if it's not certified, we'll have to go back and look at the evidence, take instruction compliance, and then make a determination of it.
I think they're been for too long. Black workers in Canada's public service have experienced discrimination, and we continue to try to provide solutions to addressing that discrimination. And we have not seen the response that workers deserve. So today, we are escalating tactics. Today, we're heading to the streets. Right now, we're taking this demonstration in front of the Court of Appeal, in front of the Federal Court of Canada, to send a very clear message to this government, to send a very clear message that the discrimination that Black people have faced in its public service at the highest levels, that is unacceptable, and there must be appropriate remedies for this discrimination. Announcing measures is not good enough, and we're going to do that right now. It is time to escalate our approach towards demanding that this government settles the Black Class Action lawsuit. It is time to take the streets. So we are going to march on Queen Street West in front of the Federal Court of Canada right now to send a clear message to this government to the Justin Trudeau government that the discrimination against Black people in its public service at the highest level, state-sponsored discrimination, is unacceptable.
I gotta go back.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Squeeze around.
Sorry.